Welcome back to Celebrity Spill Corner, where the drama never ends and the truth always surfaces. Today, we're talking about a fight between 50 Cent and Rick Ross that has lasted for more than 10 years. But this time it's not just about music. Rick Ross has always pretended to be too powerful and wealthy to care. But now his own baby mama has revealed some secrets that could change everything, and believe me, it's worse than anyone ever imagined. Rick Ross has built his entire reputation as a boss, flaunting his wealth and power. But now people are saying he is not as strong as he appears to be. Won't go away. And when Ross did decide to fight back, it wasn't just to look strong. It was to save himself. But how did it all start? You won't believe it. It wasn't because of a bad business deal, a diss track, or even a street fight. It all started with a look. Back in 2008, at the BET Awards, Rick Ross looked at 50 Cent, and for some reason, he decided he had a problem with him. However, 50 Cent didn't even know there was a problem, and he later claimed he didn't remember seeing Ross at the event. Ross took that as a sign of pure disrespect, and we all know one thing, if there is. When Ross decided to start this war, 50 Cent began playing like a chess master, ensuring that Ross would never recover from what was about to happen. Now let's talk about what Ross's baby mama just revealed and why this so-called boss has been watching Ross closely ever since he was at the top of his game. Living the life of a powerful rap star, possessing 2 platinum albums, a growing Maybach music brand, and establishing his reputation as the biggest boss in hip-hop, in his opinion, was in control, highly respected, and even feared. However, everything changed when Ross took one look at 50 Cent at the 2008 BET Awards. Perhaps it was paranoia, or perhaps it was his inflated ego, but for some reason, Ross felt disrespected, and rather than ignoring it, he saw it as the ideal opportunity to take aim at one of the most vicious people in hip-hop. This is where the crazy part comes. 50 Cent publicly stated in subsequent interviews that he did not even remember what Ross was discussing. Everything began to fall apart when Ross saw how little he cared that night, but Ross took it as disrespect and ran with it. Ross did not realize that 50 Cent does not engage in small fights, responds with a diss track, and moves on. Instead, he destroys everything when he goes to war and plays chess, not checkers. Ross had no idea what he had just stepped into. He thought he was starting some drama for entertainment purposes, hoping to get his name next to one of the biggest rappers in the world and boost his brand. Instead of merely saying a few words in an interview, Rick Ross went straight to the. He didn't hold back when he released Mafia Music, a diss track that was more than just a show-off, it was personal. Ross targeted one of 50 Cent's darkest moments, the 2008 house fire that nearly resulted in tragedy. At that time, 50's ex-girlfriend and the mother of his child, Shenika Tompkins, had already spoken out, accusing 50 of starting the fire that destroyed her home while 6 people were inside. Although the authorities never proved 50 was to blame, the rumors persisted, and Ross knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just bothering 50 Cent, he was going straight for the most agonizing wound. Ross was attempting to portray 50 Cent as a monster who would stop at nothing to silence his enemies. But there was a major problem. 50 Cent was not the type of person to ignore such an attack, and Ross continued to move forward, feeling unstoppable and confident, unsure of what would happen next. It was not just a lighthearted rap battle. Rick Ross refused to back down and even went so far as to behave as though he had already won before the fight ever began. In interviews, he flaunted his skills, giving the impression that 50 Cent was no longer relevant and that he was the new king of the streets. But Ross overlooked one thing. Most importantly, 50 Cent does more than just fight with words. He destroys reputations. He wasn't going to release one diss track and move on. Instead, he was going to expose everything that Ross didn't want the world to know. When 50 Cent began to dig, he discovered something that changed everything. "I'm going to ruin your life, bro. I'm going to mess up your life." That was 50 Cent's message. He wasn't just responding, he was going for total destruction. his first move revealed who Rick Ross truly was. Ross had built his entire career on the image of being a street boss, a man who emerged from the struggle, made big moves, and lived like a real kingpin. But 50 had something that could ruin everything, proving it was a lie. Then the internet went crazy, and images of Rick Ross in a correctional officer's uniform began to circulate all over the place, putting everything Ross had worked for at risk. Instead of selling anything, the same man who ran the streets was actually working for the system, managing jail paperwork. However, 50 Cent didn't let the internet do the job. He called Ross out in interviews to ensure that everyone knew the reality. Ridiculed him and shared those images on social media. They were terrible and appeared in memes and postings all over the place. The entire perception of Ross as a street king was crumbling, and 50 Cent still needed more evidence, so he turned to someone who knew Ross better than most, his own baby mama, Tia Kemp. Tia was more than willing to speak with 50 Cent, and she sat down with him and revealed everything. She showed an entirely different side of the man that people believed to be a boss, claiming that Rick Ross was not actually living like a king, but rather was acting like he was by renting cars, borrowing jewelry, and staying in opulent homes. His so-called empire was built on nothing but illusions, including houses that weren't even his. If that wasn't bad enough, Tia didn't hold back from confirming what people had been whispering for years, that Ross was a correctional officer. And where was Rick Ross during all of this silence? That silence said it all. 50 Cent had done what no one thought was possible. The internet had already taken over, and the damage was irreparable. Ricky's jokes were all over the place. Every meme, every diss track, and every comment was dragging. Ross's credibility was ruined. His brand was being ridiculed throughout the hip-hop community. But if you thought 50 Cent was done, think again. This time, however, he made a mistake and chose to humiliate Ross personally by leaking a private tape involving another of Ross' baby moms, Lastonia Lettiston. This move backfired badly because, although Ross may have laughed off the Officer Ricky scandal, this was something else entirely. Lastonia, however, could not stand it and took 50 Cent to court, suing him for emotional distress. In the meantime, Rick Ross continued to move forward, dropping music, avoiding the drama, and acting as though nothing bothered him. Surprisingly, the fans also started moving on, and his jokes were not as strong as before. Yes, his reputation took a hit, but he still had his music, his fans, and his empire continued growing. Unfortunately, the lawsuit cost him where it hurt the most, his wallet. The court ordered him to pay $5 million for the first time in this entire battle, and he was forced to file for bankruptcy. Believed that this feud was finished. When it seemed like things couldn't get any messier, old photos from Tia Kemp's 2009 Smooth magazine cover shoot resurfaced, setting the internet on fire once again. In the entertainment industry, baby mama drama is nothing new, but these pictures were on a whole different level. Tia Kemp made a shocking comeback by going live on Instagram and telling the world that Rick Ross is still afraid of 50 Cent and why. Because 50 Cent knows too much. Their lace set was barely there. It was all about who was behind the camera, and that person was none other than 50 Cent. Yes, the person personally overseeing the entire shoot was Rick Ross's worst nemesis. Not only did 50 Cent help Tia get on the cover, but he also made sure Rick Ross knew who was responsible. And if that wasn't enough to convince Ross, things were made even by Furious Smooth magazine. Messier the headline, "Where's the beef?" But the true dagger was that 50 Cent, who was next level petty, was the issue's guest editor. Just when everyone believed the drama had finally subsided, these two discovered new methods to insults to one another, and the most recent dispute has pushed the feud in an entirely new direction. Rick Ross's association with Big Meech following his release from prison did not sit well with 50 Cent, as he is the executive producer of the BMF TV series, which preserved the Black Mafia family legacy while Big Meech was incarcerated. Therefore, it felt betraying to him to walk out of prison and immediately align himself with Rick Ross, and you can be sure that 50 Cent did not waste any time in responding. He jumped on Instagram and posted a shady post to make sure that everyone knew exactly how he felt. "I think I am Big Meech, huh?" He posted a gigantic rat with the comment, "I think I am Big Meech." The degree of contempt was unparalleled, but it wasn't even the worst part of the caption. "Call out Big Meech." 50 made it very evident that Meech had made a grave mistake by cutting off his relationship with one person, Tammy Sins. I'm glad you asked because this is where things take a wild turn. Tammy was not just Meech's assistant. She was also his business partner and the person who handled crucial issues behind the scenes. However, just when it seemed like the drama could not get any more bizarre, she allegedly turned against him and became an FBI informant. 50 Cent and Rick Ross have a long history of back and forth. But if anyone enjoys clowning Ross as much as 50 does, it's his own baby mama Tia Kemp, and this time she took it to a whole new level. Guess who jumped into the mess laughing at how bothered 50 was over me taking a picture with Rick Ross? You guessed it, Rick Ross himself. Tia did not merely hint at the Diddy scandal. She went all out and told Rick Ross that he was embroiled in the same shady situation that led Diddy to be charged with federal trafficking. Ridiculed him, claiming that if Diddy hosts so many parties, why is Rick Ross not over there expressing his love for his close friend Sean? The criticism was harsh, and she continued by making fun of Ross for abruptly going quiet, criticized him for pretending he was unaware of what was going on, although she had previously exposed him. Tia made it apparent that Ross might not want to discuss Diddy's predicament, but she was not going to overlook it. Tia went on Instagram Live to make fun of Ross for remaining silent about it. She told him bluntly, "You are really loud when it comes to rat beef, but now when things get serious you have nothing to say." Tia didn't simply. When it seemed like things could not get any stranger, she went one step further and implied that Rick Ross was directly involved in ordering hits on people. She brought evidence and wasn't afraid to name names. Then she boldly declared that she was going to take action, intending to blow the whistle and send federal agents right to his door. But things took a turn for the worse. Tia made a startling revelation that surprised fans. She alluded to a murder, mentioned Miss Carroll, and said that Ross was directly responsible for the catastrophe. If you are pondering the identity of Miss Carroll after leaving her mother's house, Tia claimed she was murdered and that Ross and his crew were responsible for her death. She went on to say that a man was shot directly in front of a black house, which may have been another connection to Rosa Circle. Tia then took her claims to the microphone in an episode of Kasha Please, where she revealed even more information and 10 years' worth of secrets that had been kept hidden. Tia didn't hold back and began revealing things that no one had anticipated. She asserted that Rick Ross had far more children than people had assumed, 9 or 10 in total, and that most people were only aware of the ones that were known. They could look it up on Google, but there were others he never mentioned. Then she revealed even another surprise. One of his kids, in her opinion, looked exactly like Drake and came from a Russian lady. She chuckled and questioned why Ross had not told anyone about that child.